Hello everyone, welcome back to Sawyer Studios, and you might be wondering, why am I building Lego in the kitchen? Well, actually, I'm not building Lego. We are actually cooking today, and this is my good friend, Mr. May, and we will be teaching you how to make really good pork chops and a really good chicken, how to prep that. This is Nathan Bake. We've been doing cooking series on this channel for a little bit now. Mr. May, how would you explain to us what we were going to do today?
Let's go. Everybody and their mother has a steak recipe that you've had before.
Mm-hmm.
You have a dad or a grandpa who probably is like, oh, my steak's the best way to do it. We're not going to touch that today. But how many times have you had a bad roast chicken that was drier than desert, and probably also a bad pork chop that was drier than the desert? But today we're going to do some simple, really easy ways to cook a chicken properly and cook pork chops properly, that they are both juicy and delicious at the same time. And we might even get a little bit of a nice crust on the outside too. Yeah. So that's what we're going to get started.
All right, yeah. So what have you already done to this, just so that we can catch them up?
So here's the thing about cooking meat, is it's not just about what you do when you put it on the heat. It's what you do ahead of time, right? So with chicken, this is something you may not know. In the restaurant world and in other worlds, a lot of the time, an easy way to prevent your chicken from being dry is by doing something called brining it. And brining it comes in two different forms. You have dry brine and a liquid brine. Dry brine is where you literally are covering the chicken in salt. Like just everywhere you're getting it, and you're letting it sit, and that salt actually soaks into the meat and helps it to kind of firm up, but also at the same time retain a lot of its juice. So that gets rid of your dry chicken problem, and you're flavoring it at the same time. A liquid brine does the same thing, but you make a liquid out of salt, sugar, and herbs and other things, and that soaks in and kind of flavors your chicken from the inside out. Incidentally, I have done both here. I did a liquid brine for this chicken. The chicken has also been trussed. So one thing we'll talk about more later is that trussing a chicken is really important for making sure it cooks kind of at the same time. So you can kind of see that there's string, it's all tied up like an outlaw. And then we have our pork chops. And our pork chops, I actually did a dry brine. If you might not be able to see it, but there's some liquid floating around on the bottom of the plate. And that is stuff that has actually come out of the meat as a result of being salted. So I did a dry brine, which again means I covered them in salt and I let them sit in the fridge overnight. And now they're ready to go as well. For the pork, in the end, we're gonna end up making a rosemary and garlic.
And now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
White wine sauce to go with the pork chops, just because that tastes really good. We have to make clarified butter. Let's get started with that.
All right.
Butter, we're gonna need half a stick. Oh, there it goes. Best butter you can. If you can get like grass-fed butter, I don't know if this one is. Let's see what this one is.
Is this free-range butter?
I don't know. Let's see if it is.
I actually only use free-range butter. The amount of abuse that happens to butter in America every year is unfathomable.
You would be. We're just gonna cut it in half with a little knife.
Clarified butter.
Which is clarified butter. What is happening with clarified butter? Well,
allow him to clarify.
We're gonna need one of these. When you're clarifying butter, there's all these like milk fats and stuff inside butter that you don't necessarily notice. You don't necessarily notice. As soon as you warm up butter, all that starts to come to the top.
Just spoon it out, right?
Yeah, basically. So that you don't have a butter that when you use it to cook, it burns really quickly. Clarified butter does not burn. It's got a really higher smoke point, and because there's nothing in it that can burn, it takes forever.
So Mr. May is putting the pot on the stove right now.
We are going to salt this chicken very gently. We make sure that it doesn't work. Okay.
Salt grinder?
Salt grinders aren't working.
Take the batteries from the pepper grinder.
Pepper grinder isn't working either.
While Luke's getting batteries for a salt grinder, let me tell you about Mr. May. He plays the cello. He's a great music person, so if you live in the upstate New York area, you can get cello lessons from him. This is
sesame.
This is Sesame, and this is Mrs. May, who you saw in the last video.
But she does not get used in the recipes.
Yes, no
Her
Sesame.
name is very misleading.
Yes, yes.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Mr. May is attempting to
I got
use the salt grinder, and it's not grinding.
This is not good. It's a good thing this isn't a live show.
Oh.
It's a good thing we can go back through and do movie magic. Okay, so here's where everything's falling apart. Everything's falling apart! Except for my secret weapon. We have
Fingers.
some flaky sea salt. So, over
That's
here, as you cook it, it'll start to do this. All the little white stuff is all of the milk solids. So what we're gonna do is one of these maneuvers. We're gonna tip it, gently spooning off our buddies here, okay? Keep going until all of it's gone, and it will look like, basically like the stuff they put on popcorn at the movies. If you have a way to grind salt, it's much better in my opinion. You can do that. You can do it by hand. That's what I'm gonna do right now, after I just made a mess with all this. Ah! And I'm gonna brush the chicken with the clarified butter. We've already brined the chicken. We've already trussed the chicken. Another step that you can try that we didn't do for this is I actually like to air cool my chickens. And I do that for literally 2 to 3 days. I leave it in the refrigerator open, just in the open air. And that exposure to the air makes the skin firm up a lot and get really dry. And that dry skin is what equals crispy skin after it's been roasted. And so it's just a really nice combination in the end. You just really want to get it on there and cover everything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to salt the chicken from the outside only. So I'm just going to kind of crack this up in my fingers.
This is the last step before we put it in the oven.
Yep.
And
So-
we preheated the oven to what?
So the oven, there are 2 ways to do this. If you air cool your chicken for like 3 days, like I mentioned, then what I like to do is I start out at 475 degrees Fahrenheit. And the chicken sits in there for 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then you crank the heat down to 375
Okay.
and let it kind of ride out the rest of its journey on that heat. But for this chicken, since we really want that crispy, salty skin, I'm gonna actually keep it at 475 for the entirety of, hello?
Look what I found in my Lego Masters bag.
Oh, it's a surprise guest. It's Sesame.
Well, actually, Sesame was on earlier.
Oh, so we're gonna go 475 degrees. I might flip it around a little during its time. We are gonna just kind of set it in. I'll set a timer for 30 minutes. It's probably gonna take a little longer than that. I'll start checking the temperature after 30 minutes.
All right, now the pork chops.
The pork chops.
I will tell you, Mr. May, nothing is worse for me than just a dry pork chop.
Yeah, come on. How many times have you had a bad dry pork chop? I mean, bone dry, you bite into it and it's just not fun. Your mother's pork chops, I'm sorry, they're probably bad, okay? But they don't have to be. Unless you are somebody's mother, in which case, I'm gonna stop talking. So a couple things to know. We already talked about, we dry brined this. So I covered both sides of the pork chop in salt. And I literally just did, you don't have to do tiny grains of salt. I did kosher salt. And it has these big crystals, and I just kind of sprinkled it all over. While we've been talking and having fun, these pork chops have been doing something called tempering. When you're tempering something, it's a good thing to do for steaks as well, or anything that's a chop or a cut like this. They're coming up to kind of a more of room temperature. So what you want when you're gonna grill something hot and fast is you want them to be at room temperature so that you don't have a cold inside and a burnt outside. I'm just gonna come through and just kind of have them dry. Normally, my opinion is that you can get a great okay, no, I'm just kidding. So you can get a great pork chop, a great steak, anything, using one of these guys.
Oh.
In my left hand, we have a cast iron pan, just a pretty normal cast iron pan. These are great for me. This is a carbon steel pan. So carbon steel is like cast iron, except it's a little bit lighter, and it does a little bit of a better job retaining heat. Sometimes, in my opinion, to its detriment, but whatever. So instead of using carbon steel or cast iron today, we're going to use a Blackstone griddle. But a Blackstone griddle is made out of carbon steel, so it's going to have the same effect. So if you have a Blackstone at home, you can use that to cook your chops. So we're going to get the stuff ready for one of the simplest things you can do to take your already really good pork chops. Now, these are going to be really good on their own.
Yeah.
Like, you could just eat this by itself.
Right.
That's how, like, but I really like a rosemary garlic flavor with pork, so we're gonna make a really simple rosemary garlic white wine sauce. We only have to do a few things for this. All right, so what I'm gonna do for the garlic, or what Mr. Sawyer's gonna do for the garlic, is just, I like to trim the edges off, get that out of the way, and then give it the old mythical Chef Josh palm heel strike. And that gets all of the rest of the skin off, and then that can go through our mincer.
I feel like making a meat sauce, like, it sounds daunting, but I feel like it's not that hard.
It's not.
And it really adds to a dinner, like, exponentially.
You're gonna see, it's really not hard.
I don't know why people don't do it more.
So rosemary, I already started doing it. There's a really easy way to clean rosemary off of a thing, and it's literally you pinch your fingers up high, and you're just gonna run it down like this. See? And now you've got all your rosemary that you can do whatever you want with. And then when it comes to the top, you kind of have to, you just pull at it a little bit. But, yep, so I've got my rosemary. Chop this up real quick. We're doing a little something called mise en place.
what does that word mean, Mr. May?
Nathan, do you know what that word means?
No, I don't.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's on plus.
Okay, so mise en place is something that some of you have probably already done before. It means everything in its place. So, everything in place. Basically, when you're cooking, it's a really good idea to have your ingredients all taken care of ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
And everything set out the way you need it to be so that you're not running around the kitchen doing things last minute.
Yep.
That's the basic definition of mise en place.
It's like when you're building Lego. You just
Exactly.
want everything in its place.
If you're somebody who likes to be organized when you're building your Lego, it's exactly, you're doing your own little version of mise en place.
Not my mise en place.
So, we're doing that right now. I'm adding the minced garlic. You can do minced garlic with a knife, but I am lazy and I really like doing what Mr. Sawyer is doing right now and just running it through a garlic. What is this called? Is this called the garlic mincer?
I think so.
Anyway, one of these little things. You all probably have one of these. If you don't, you should get one. A little garlic mincer. Garlic goes in, you push it, squeeze. So he's peeling the skin off and all that stuff. And it's going into the little press, and then we bring it over our little container. And you squeeze, and there comes all the minced garlic. It's like Play-Doh, except the only problem is you have to do that and clean it off a little bit.
It is a pain to clean this.
It is, but it's still a handy tool.
It's very important to get all the alcohol out
Yep.
of the sauce, or else it will taste bad, in my opinion.
Common misconception, right? That anything with alcohol, vodka sauce, or any kind of chicken with white wine, it does not have any of the alcohol left that can get you drunk.
Yeah.
Right? All of the alcohol cooks out if you do it properly. And so the cool thing is it tastes bad. It's very in your face when you're when you're eating alcohol like that. And so, but when it all cooks off, it leaves behind, every alcohol has a different kind of flavor that it leaves behind. But white wine and red wine are really good at being cooked with.
What's your favorite red wines to cook with, Mr. May?
I usually end up going with Cabernet Sauvignon. That's very good for beef, and really, you pretty much only use red wine for beef anyway.
Yeah.
You could use it for pork, but I end up finding that white wine is actually a little bit nicer for pork because it's kind of walks that weird line between like chicken and red meat. It's time for a chicken update. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Let's just see how we're looking so far. I'm gonna bring it over. Okay. So I'm gonna guess it is not nearly done. But you can see that it's starting to kind of turn that golden brown color that people love in chicken. So we are going to check the temperature real quick. I just realized my thermometer is not clean. So I'll do that first, but you can kind of see the salt on it. And
What's the temperature that you need for chicken, Mr. May?
for chicken, you want everything to be at least 165 degrees. And so here's my plug for
Fahrenheit.
using a thermometer. Use a thermometer when you cook, especially meat. We're going to talk about the done temperature for the pork chops. We're going to talk about the done temperature for the chicken.
Maybe except steak.
If you don't need to use it for steak. Don't listen to what the manly men tell you.
No.
If you use a thermometer on the steak,
No.
guess what? You can know exactly what the temperature is.
You don't need.
And if you want a medium rare steak, you know what you do? You stick the thermometer in it. If it says 125, yank it. And then wrap it in tin foil. And it's going to be at medium rare by the time you unfold it in like 10 minutes. But guess what? If I'm sitting there trying to... I have no real clue of what's going on. I might think I know. But I know better if I have a thermometer stuck in it.
What if you have a thermometer on the
Stop
countertop?
touching your steak. It's weird.
It's not weird.
If you use it on pork chops.
See, some of us are meat whisperers, and the meat will just whisper to our fingers if it's hot enough, and our fingers will whisper to our brain receptors, and then we will know, it's done.
All right, well, no sir. So right now we're only at like 85, not 80. So we got some time. We got to get up to 165. So we got to wait there. I'm gonna put the timer on. To the grill. So we're here at the Blackstone, right in my backyard, my beautiful little house, and we're gonna throw these little porkies right on. So first thing you do, Blackstone is Blackstone. I'm not going to talk about how to use it. If you're interested in one, look it up on your own time. But I'm going to add some oil. This is fully preheated. You can tell because it is shimmering and moving, and pretty much immediately I'm just going to spread this out so that there's oil everywhere. And then we're going to do this. And what I'm going to do is set a timer for about 1.5 minutes. Some people say 2 minutes, but for whatever reason, I found that sometimes, even on medium-high heat, 2 minutes is a little too long. And then we're going to employ one of my favorite tools. This is called like a steak weight, a steak press, and I'm literally just going to do this. And I'll move them around during my time and kind of push a little bit. And what that does is it provides extra weight to really help you get a nice sear. So it's forcing a lot of pressure and a lot of contact on the hot grill. So everywhere, you've probably never seen a pork chop with sears like these. We'll have to see. But I really like cooking them this way. You'll see the results. You don't want to cook it too hot or too long, or the sauce will break, and you'll know when that happens. It'll all of a sudden, it'll go from a nice smooth looking texture to being like it'll almost look like that butter. If you clarify your own butter, it'll look like that again. And then it's pretty much impossible to fix. So you don't want to do that. So don't go hot and too long. What's this? A visit from a surprise ingredient. We have a little chili crisp here. Chopped onions and chili peppers and garlic and mushroom that's fried in oil until it's left with like a chili oil and like all these crunchy, crispy little pieces of fried garlic and onion and chili. And it is fantastic.
Oh, that's good.
Isn't it? All right, so our pork chops have been resting. If you pull these off at the correct time and they're not quite at the done temperature, then you need to rest them about 10 minutes. I would say these have rested about 10 minutes. If you're worried about the whole, you can kind of pick these up off the bone and just kind of like work them down like that. And that's a fun part right there. I'm just gonna slice it.
Oh, that
Got a nice,
so
beautiful
nice.
crust on
Get a
it.
zoom in on that.
These little pork steaks here. And then gonna run. And when you got everything fried up well, sometimes these bits with the extra fat cap are really nice. You can kind of see the juice like squeeze out of them a little bit. You want to go against the grain, just like a steak. All right, so we're just gonna kind of spoon this over the top. Our chili crisp, garlic, rosemary, kind of white wine, butter. All right,
Oh, yeah.
dink it, sink it.
Oh, yeah. And that's a good pork chop. And the sauce really does add, like, it matters.
That's good. All right, chicken.
No, I thought for the longest time I didn't like mushrooms, and no, it was just like I didn't like my mom's mushrooms. Oh, God. I picked with mom to say, comment below other things you want us to cook and test. Because this is like, this is amazing.
Took a little longer than I normally have it go, but that just depends on your oven. Make sure you use the thermometer. I checked it, it's at 165 at least all the way through. You'll probably have some spots that end up, but you can see how golden brown is that. So we're gonna cut into this and, you know, might let it rest a little bit first just so it cools off and it settles in. Just gonna lift, move, and then you've got all this juice and everything that's on here. I'm just gonna kind of release it from its binding, its bondage here. Sometimes this butcher twine is a little weird. There you go, that should be all of it. When it comes to this is the first thing you gotta do. I've heard this called the chef's treat. Get the wings.
I like wings better than drums, personally.
Okay.
Mr. Simmons would say that's incorrect.
When it comes to these, we're just gonna kind of work our knife down as far as you can until eventually you're gonna run into a joint. And what you're gonna do is kind of find the joint, and then you're gonna kind of bust it through. And then you get a whole thing. I'm just gonna kind of carve this, kind of work my way down, cut some slices. And you can just kind of work your way down that. I hope that you make this at home and that you enjoy it too. Enjoy a simple, proper roast chicken. Of course, my knives, if you didn't believe that they needed to be sharpened before, you can believe them now. I'm working my way through. It's very hot right now, which is why you should let it rest. So I'll finish this up later. This is not carved to my liking yet, but there's no sense in having a 20-minute long video of me cutting a chicken. So in the end, you'll have a carcass. Okay, a carcass. Guess what? Do you like chicken soup?
I do.
I do too. You can make your own chicken broth. You should save this, make chicken broth out of it. Makes a delicious flavor because one of the things that people like to do when they make a good broth is they roast up some bones and stuff first. But this already has your roasted flavor, so you're good to go. And that's it.
Beautiful.
And that is chicken and pork
Amazing.
in a way that you don't hate.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh. Oh! Fantastic.
That is so, there's, nothing's dry. That is like, oh, that's so juicy. All right, well, thank everyone for watching this Nathan Bake episode. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if you want to see more of these and what you would like to see in the videos. Give this video a like, support Mr. May over here, and see you on the next one. Bye.
Hey everyone, if you liked that video, you're definitely gonna like this video that I did with Mr. May before called The Main Feast Nathan Bake, where we made fried oysters, seafood chowder, and blueberry margaritas. It was an amazing adventure, great time, amazing food. You definitely gonna wanna check out this recipe that we came up with. Go check it out.